All right, well, I'm going to talk today about Dostoevsky's novel, Memoirs from the House of the Dead, sometimes just titled House of the Dead. This is the Oxford University Press edition. This particular translation was done by Jesse Colson, one of Dostoevsky's, I guess, shorter novels. Um, it's kind of a semi autobiographical, in a way, novel. It kind of narrates the experiences of a prisoner named Alexander Petrovic, who is sentenced to a prison in Siberia. And Dostoevsky himself went to prison. His was He was a political prisoner. Dostoevsky was. His character Alexander here is put in prison for the murder of his wife. All right. So there are differences, obviously, between Dostoevsky's life and the life of Alexander in the novel. It says here on the back, Tolstoy's quote, "I know no better book in all modern literature." I believe this was from one of Tolstoy's letters, and it talks briefly in the introduction of this novel. However, I would not recommend reading the introduction at the beginning of this because of the fact that it spoils some of Dostoevsky's other novels, particularly the novel The Brothers Karamazov. Like, he just totally blows it here, and I would skip over it. Okay, there should be a spoiler warning in the intro. So the introduction here was written by Ronald Hingley, and unfortunately, like I said, luckily I've already read The Brothers Karamazov, or I would have spoiled a major plot point by reading that introduction. It's uh, it's different from other Dostoevsky novels that I've read. So I've read all of four of Dostoevsky's major novels at this point: Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, Demons, and Brothers Karamazov. I've also read Notes from Underground and The Gambler. And so you can add this to the list. It's not like those others. I mean, it's very different. I don't really know quite how to explain it. It doesn't follow like a linear. Well, I guess the plot's kind of linear, but it's there's not really much of a plot. It's just kind of like little snapshots in the life of this prisoner Alexander as he talks to you about various experiences. Um, for instance, the arrival at the prison. There is a particular portion of the book that talks about the prison hospital. There is a section about a Christmas pageant that they put on, kind of like that's towards the end of section one. The book is divided in like two sections. So section one ends around Christmas, and then section two kind of picks up in the spring. You kind of get like little snapshots of Easter, the Paschal service. Of course, this is Orthodox because it's in Russia, so all the services are Orthodox. But spirituality doesn't seem to take as much precedent in this novel as it does in some of the others. So it may be a little bit more accessible to people. I don't really know. I mean, like, how to feel about it. I marked out a bunch of passages in here that there's not real strong characterization like you would have, for instance, in like The Idiot, with Prince Mishkin and Rogozhin, or the story of Raskolnikov, Rodion Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment, or even the Brothers K, the various characters you meet there, Ivan and you know Alyosha, Dmitri. There's a lot of characters that just kind of float in and out of the narrative here. we don't spend a whole lot of time with them or really get to know them all that well. It's mainly just kind of a series of reflections about various experiences within this Siberian prison camp. And there's a lot of people that'll show up for, a couple of pages and then they're gone. You don't see them again. Some of them come back, some of them don't. And you run the gamut of people across various levels, social classes in society. Where I really think that the book shines is the psychology. Once again, Dostoevsky's very good about getting in and delving into the psychology of people. I marked out a passage on page 9, right at the beginning, where he's talking about the human condition. And he says this: yes, mankind is tough. Man is a creature who can get used to anything. And I believe that is the very best way of defining him. So throughout this book, you'll see like experiences that are pretty horrific. They shackle these people when they come in. They have irons on their, chains. The food is bad. Obviously, they talk about the bread. Eating black bread, eating cabbage soup with like weevils or cockroaches in it, and you just eat it because you're hungry. Not to mention the cold, how cold it is in Siberia. It's one of the reasons why people don't really try to escape. So like there is an escape attempt in here that happens towards the end of the novel. Um, Alexander doesn't try to escape, but some of the other people in the prison do. Some of the horrific scenes of corporal punishment, floggings, being beaten with rods is a big thing in here. Or, you'll get assigned lashes, anywhere from like 500 to 3,000. And if you can't endure the beatings, then they send you to the hospital. And then when the physician says that you're well enough to receive the rest of your beating, you can go back and, get beat some more. There are images of cruelty towards animals that take place in this novel, particularly dogs. That happens towards the end. Some of the things that happens to the dogs. There's a guy that I guess practices some sort of tanning, and they'll find stray dogs and skin them to line the inside of boots or coats. That's not a large portion of the book, but it's there. I found it particularly disturbing because like I have a dog and I've had dogs my whole life, so seeing people treat dogs the way that they're treated in this book was a little unsettling. Something maybe about human nature is that when it comes to cruelty against people, for some reason, we're much more able to accept it than we are cruelty against animals. Why is that? I don't know. One of the peculiarities of human nature, I guess. But I had a whole series of passages laid out here that I'll look through them real quick and see if there's any that I feel like reading to you, and I'll close out this review. All right, so for instance, here's a philosophical passage where Alexander is, kind of weighing the crimes committed by people and that they all get the same punishment. And he's kind of like struggling with this. He says, it's true that crimes cannot be equated with one another. Let's see. It is true that crimes cannot be equated with one another, even approximately. This man and that, for instance, have both killed a man. All the circumstances of both cases are weighed, and almost the same punishment is meted out to the one and to the other. But what difference there is between the crimes, nevertheless. One man, for example, has committed murder casually, for nothing at all, for an onion. He went out on the highway and cut down a passing peasant who had nothing on him but one onion. Look, Gaffer, you sent me out for plunder. I killed the peasant yonder, and all I found was an onion. Fool! An onion is as good as a kopeck. 100 deaths is 100 onions. And there you have a whole ruble. So runs the prison legend. The other killed protecting the honor of his beloved, or his sister, or his daughter, from a lustful tyrant. One man kills because he's a vagrant, beset by a whole regiment of pursuers, trying to protect his liberty, even his life, dying, perhaps, if not rare, of starvation. Another cuts little children's throats for pleasure of killing, of feeling their warm blood on his hands for the enjoyment of their terror and their last bird-like flutterings under the knife. What happens? Both the one and the other get the same penal servitude. There are, it is true, variations in terms of sentences, but there are comparatively few of these variants possible, while the variations in the nature of crime are infinite in number. Every different personality means a different crime. So here you can see people receive the same sentence for widely varying motives for committing crimes, and that the person that commits murder to protect a loved one from being ravished and a person that murders children both end up in the same place. So it's one of these kind of musings that Dostoevsky points out here. There's various other passages like this throughout. Talks about class separation between prisoners, um, that the people that are more high class, persons like Dostoevsky, who came from a more, well-to-do family, that they don't have the comradeship with the poorer prisoners, the common folk. They're not regarded with the same, they're almost seen as outsiders, right? So there's all these horrific scenes that take place throughout, but there are these respites, these moments of humanity, um, interspersed throughout the novel. And it's very, I don't know how I'd rate it. It's very different from the other things I've read. It's very, I still think it's good. It's not a masterwork like the Crime and Punishment or Brothers K. But it's probably more accessible. So if you've never read Dostoevsky before, this shorter work may be more digestible for you. You can kind of see the kind of like the genesis of characters that appear in other works. And it's clear that those works that Dostoevsky's making later on in life, he's drawing from his experiences in Siberian prison. So I really don't have anything else to say about it. I mean, like, once again, if I wanted to talk about Dostoevsky and really get into a deep dive on this, I could probably talk about this book for an hour easily, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. This is a recommend for me. Everything I've read by Dostoevsky thus far has been worth my time and worthy of reading. So, yeah, like I said, if you've never read Dostoevsky, you don't know where to start. Maybe start with House of the Dead or something short like Notes from Underground or The Gambler. And then you can kind of gauge whether or not you're going to enjoy his larger novels. Or you could just jump right into Crime and Punishment, you know? But if Crime and Punishment intimidates you and you're looking for something more bite-sized, this would probably fit the bill. All right. Thank you for watching, as always. Have you read this? Have you read any other Dostoevsky? What do you think about him? Let me know below. I'll be getting into some more Russian literature, as I've just picked up Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. I probably butchered it, but I read War and Peace like 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, and I figured, I should probably read some other Russian literature since all I seem to be reading is Dostoevsky. So when I dive into that, that'll probably be my last read of 2025 because it's a chunker. It's pretty chunky book. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.